Good evening, everyone. And I actually shouldn't be saying good evening because it's 2 in the morning right now, but I don't need a sense of time currently. So I can go to bed at whatever point I choose. But right now, we're going to be making a quick video. It's probably going to be in two parts of the playlist, just because we're going to be going over an introduction on this topic as well as some basic commands working with databases. Uh, and that might take up a bit more time than having to work through a bit more advanced techniques. But today we're going to be working in statistical analysis software, which is SAS, and giving ourselves a quick introduction on what that is. So, SAS is a program that allows us to use different types of code, um, different types of formats, different type of data entries in order to augment data sets and produce pretty much whatever desired outcome we want in terms of transforming and achieving number summaries from data sets. Uh, the great thing about SAS, which differs from other programs such as, let's say, Minitab and R, the best thing about SAS is that we're mainly instead of completely transforming data sets, we are pulling and retrieving data that we want or information that we want from data sets, putting it back, and if we choose, we can save it as another output or leave what I like to call a paper trail, little cookie crumbs that we can go back and see our data sets and tables that we worked as and see different points that we left off. That is one of the main strengths of SAS. Um, Another strength is that it is incredibly easy to use. The lines of codes are very easy, and whenever you do a specific output, if you mess something up for whatever reason, the program does a very good job at attempting to explain what you did wrong. Um, Also, this is both a pro and con, but because it isn't open source, it tends to have a really good community where you can go to their board, ask whatever question you want, get replies in a respectable amount of time, as well as have a great community to reinforce what you're learning. Some cons about SAS is that because, at least I think, because it's easier to use, you're going to be working with a lot more lines of code than if you were to use R. In order to execute something in R, I can use maybe 3 lines of code, where in SAS, in order to rename different variables, import data sets, I could be looking at around like 6 to 10 lines of code for a simple procedure. That's one of the main drawbacks. And because it isn't open source, this type of software, you do have to pay a subscription. It's heavily copyrighted, and you can't really augment or change it in those forms. But without further ado, let's get into one of the topics we will perform in SAS, which is SQL. SQL stands for Structured Query Language, and it's a type of language that's used in many different programs, one of them just being SAS, which allows us to create data sets using lines of code. So, not using anything that exists. We can use stuff that exists, but we're using this and other specific formats to augment that data set, selecting different terms, ordering them by different clauses, using specific clauses to determine factors of those data sets, and choosing what we want to do with them. That is one of the greatest strengths of structured query language. The possibilities are essentially endless once you've mastered it, and it can really take you to places and careers that you never really thought you could achieve. It's a very powerful language that I would at least say that any seasoned programmer should have under their belt. So, where is this taking us? How do we use SQL in SAS? It starts with this command up here, proc SQL, and it's going to be working this line of code with our from statement, which is from our data set. Our data set is going to have different variables. It might have columns named as first, last, section, which is SECT, homework 1, 2, 3, and then these are different exams for that data set. We can select these variables from this data set here, give it a title, and order them by specific factors. And if we were to run this code, once we've imported our data set, which is a very basic thing that we should know how to do in SAS, we will get an SQL report, which is incredible. We're also capable of doing something a bit more advanced, which is taking averages of these different columns, each and every single one from the same data set, grouping them by the section right here, and giving it a title, running this code. And there you have a report, averages for those columns. There's a lot of powerful stuff you could do in SQL, as you can see. It really does transcend you to places where you don't normally see with other programming languages. But as you can see, it can get pretty lengthy, some of the code, unless you take some time to condense it. How about we generate an SQL report where we eliminate duplicate observations? This is going to be using a different type of code. We're going to still use the proc SQL format, title it with whatever name we want from our data set, and select all. This is what the asterisk means. When we see this black asterisk, it means we're selecting every single variable from that data set and omitting the distinct ones. So what happens when we run it? Here's our entire SQL report, except all the duplicate entries have been omitted. What else can we do? It says, can we generate an SQL report summary for frequencies for different medical codes and types of services? Let me highlight this. So we're going to be using proc frequency to determine frequencies from our new data set, which we described up here, titling it as something else, labeling it as a table, and running it. And there you have it right here. You have the different frequencies. You can see that, let's say if a patient comes in at a specific time, they'll have a frequency of 7. And if they leave at a specific time, it's a frequency of 14, 33, and 66%, which is incredible. I think I'm going to stop the recording right here. We do have a bit more advanced code right here where we're going to be getting into organizing them by different claims, determining what different claims are for these patients, as well as performing unions where we join and exclude certain types of factors. But this was just meant to be a quick general overview on how SQL works in SAS and some of the pros, cons, strengths, and weaknesses of using this type of programming in general. However, thank you guys for taking the time to look at this video. It was just a brief introduction. I didn't want to get too carried away with it, and I will see you guys again.